Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce, the podcast where we talk to extraordinary coaches and leaders to dive into the realms of leadership and coaching. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. So let's jump in with another guest and find out their answer to the question, what is your secret sauce? Before we begin, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting, where they believe your character is the compass guiding you through life's journey. Whether you're facing personal or professional challenges, they are dedicated to helping you discover and strengthen the core values that define who you are. We're so glad to have you here. Dave, what do we have on the podcast today?
I would like to welcome Jo, a dear friend of one of the other friends of the podcast, Helen Dan. And Jo, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you both. I'm excited to see where this conversation goes. I really am. So thank you for having me here.
Yeah, you never know where the conversation goes. And the reason Matt and I started the podcast is selfishly, we like to hang out with coaches and learn a little more about what they do and how they make a difference in the world. And a little bit below the surface of how we show up as coaches and what drives us to be the coaches we are. So I like to start off with just an energy check-in. On a scale from 1 low to 10 high, what is your energy at the current moment?
Wow. Well, do you know what? I've had quite a heavy morning this morning, coaching a group of fantastic people in Europe. But obviously it's always quite tiring because you're listening and whatever else. So I reckon before we had our pre-podcast check-in, I was probably a 7, but I think you two have thrown me right up to a 10 already, to be fair. So you two have worked wonders on the pre-podcast preamble.
Yeah.
That's as high as we go, Matt. So let's end the podcast
just call it
now.
a day. Jo Wright, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. So I am absolutely, I was at about an 8, but actually after our initial conversation, it's just like spark. And I think I'm up to a 10 as well. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, I'm there. Maybe 9.5. I would have 2 cups of tea this morning. So yeah, I'm
awesome. We're doing well between the
awesome.
3 of us then.
Yeah. We're I am located in an hour north of New York City. Matt is right outside of Houston. Where are you located today?
Oh, I am in a gorgeous little village in Cheshire, in England, between Manchester and Liverpool. That's the sort of 2 biggest cities, and I'm somewhere in the middle in a gorgeous little village.
Yeah. So not a planned question, but now that I heard Manchester and Liverpool, which team should I ask? Should I not ask? Don't ask.
I'm a long-suffering wife of a Manchester City fan.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
I heard many a support group has been launched for that.
So yeah, I have to watch those guys by default, but actually my hometown is actually a team that won the Premier League. I think it was back in 94.
West Ham.
I bet you can't even remember who that was then. No.
Leicester.
No.
Yeah.
Interesting, the West Ham comment, because they were playing Manchester United on the day that we won the Premier League. Blackburn Rovers.
There's no better name.
Exactly. Alan Shearer was in his heyday.
Yeah.
There we go. You've sent me down a rabbit hole. Let's talk about coaches.
I'll bring you back. So you're on a journey to go see your Blackburn Rovers, and you're taking the team bus probably or some bus, and somebody turns to you and says, "Hi, what do you do?" Oh, how do you describe that?
Crikey! That is a really great question. I think I'd probably describe myself as somebody who raises awareness on the power of coaching, because that's what I do. I'm always beating the drum, I've got my soapbox, I get my loud hailer out. I'm kind of the one who shouts it from the rooftop. So I think that's probably what I would tell people I do. Yeah, there's a few things under there as well, but by then they would probably have switched back to listening to the football songs and things. So I raise awareness on this powerful topic.
Yeah. What would we hear you shouting?
Oh, what do you hear? Oh, how powerful coaching conversations are, how life-changing conversations they are, and actually how they don't need to just be reserved for professional accredited coaches. The more we get leaders and managers having better conversations at a certain level, the better. Absolutely the better. So for me, let's get democratize coaching.
Yeah.
Cheers
okay,
to
Jo,
that.
we're going to jump right in.
Cheers to that.
This can go anywhere. Oh, like into our like.
Oh, are we not already?
Yeah, of course. We essentially have questions that we like to ask, but who knows whether we really get to them or not. But if you had to describe your secret sauce, what is your secret sauce?
Well, I think I've probably already shared it. I think it's, I thought long and hard about this, and I thought, oh, is it about helping people have better conversations? But actually, I think it's raising awareness of people having the conversation, better conversations. And I think people and organizations can get so hung up in, processes that, but actually let's open up human conversations. And I say human deliberately, actually. So human conversations to really build connections, relationships, help raise awareness on self-awareness, self-belief, so many reasons. So for me, it's, I raise awareness on conversations and also help build capability. But I think the awareness thing is first, because there's so many myths about coaching.
When did you know that was your secret sauce? Can you take us back to that story?
Yeah, well, I think I've only recognized it since I've co-founded Coaching Culture. I think Coaching Culture has given me a platform to raise awareness. I always knew coaching was the answer, but I didn't know my purpose was to inspire as many people as possible to think differently through the power of coaching, which I've got on my wall up there as my purpose. And I think I'd always known that coaching was the secret sauce for everybody if they could find it, but actually let me raise awareness of it and get more people thinking about it. And I think, I'm on that journey, as we all are.
It's interesting. As you look for that in the people that you coach, how would they experience that call to action, like what you're looking for and what you're evoking, what you're trying to bring out of them?
Do you know what? I think it's broader than that, rather than I think it's bigger than the people I'm coaching, because when I coach, I feel like I'm sprinkling fairy dust. I think it's a sprinkle here and a sprinkle there. And actually, I think Coaching Culture, as an example, has allowed me to get a voice and a platform more out to the world and getting through. We've created lots of technology to enable leaders and managers to have better conversations. Through technology, we can reach the far corners without having to sprinkle fairy dust. So I actually think it turns up in how more, rather than in how I'm coaching, I think it's more in how I unlock that through different platforms, really. Even today on our podcast, this is raising awareness with yourselves on the power of coaching. So when I coach people, like I said, I feel like I'm sprinkling fairy dust, when actually I think my purpose is actually to amplify that, to get the message out. I think the coaching industry has been steeped in traditional messages and kind of shrouded by, this is a dark art, and actually let's get it out there. The more and more people who either have better leaders and managers who have better conversations, who have professional coaches or have internal coaches, the more we keep raising awareness on the power of coaching, the better not just people, teams and organizations will be, but for me, the better the world will be. It's that big, and it could be that big. So for me, I suppose it shows up in how I am every day, really.
Jo, could you tell us a story of maybe a supervisor or a manager that really was fundamentally changed? Because I would imagine most people would have their own personal story, but what's one that you kind of think about as you're, I'll say, evangelizing the coaching message? What do you typically think about?
For me, there's one that's really close to home, and that's my husband. Actually, when he experienced, and I really saw it in real life, close up, he went on a leadership development program, and they started having what I now call transformational conversations amongst themselves. So this was beyond the transactional, beyond the things that you think of up here, and they moved from head to heart, and they really got to know each other deeply in person. And then the challenge was to go out and take that to their teams and to really get to know their teams beyond the CV, beyond the job, actually get them to know them as real human beings. And I saw my husband was in a really operationally target driven role, and had very much always been on targets, performance, this, that, and the other. And actually, the minute these conversations went really to another level, it was phenomenal. One, see the performance of his area that he was leading, but two, the conversations he was having as a human being. It fundamentally changed him. And I saw that many, many years ago, and it really piqued my interest. I was already a manager myself that was coaching other people, and I could see the difference coaching was making to people. But when I saw it that close to home, and then in the results, that the tangible performance metrics that followed, because people got to know him and he got to know them better, suddenly they all started working together as one team rather than just focusing on the tasks and the performance. And it's really influenced, how I help other people, how I help leaders and managers and organizations focus on the conversations that matter, or what I call them, the conversations that matter. So, I could give many examples of different leaders who've made a difference, or managers, but actually, certainly from a coaching culture perspective, I tend to work at the organizational level. There's plenty of case studies, even in my book, about organizations who have allowed their leaders and managers to adopt a coaching style more often, and the results have been phenomenal. Absolutely. And they've taken organizations from good to great, or they've taken organizations from managers just down in the day job and not doing what my husband was doing, not actually lifting their head up and caring about the people around them, to suddenly having the better conversations. For me, I often say coaching is that everybody says there is no silver bullet, and I say there is a silver bullet. It is coaching.
Yeah, I was just excited. You used the word care. And I think that is a fundamental shift when all of a sudden a manager or supervisor cares and asks the thing that they really need to ask. And it may have nothing to do with the deliverable. And it may be something totally, outside of work, or it may, and all of a sudden that person goes, oh, you asked because you really, truly cared, not because you're just trying to get something done. And I think that really shifts things.
So important. So important.
I'm very interested in the shift, and in two pieces. One is we're using your husband as an example of typical manager A. I apologize in advance. Let's
bring him along, bring him into the conversation. Yeah. He's living proof.
Yeah, no, we'll send some really good American soccer players for his team next year. Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. All right. In terms of the shift of what had to happen for your husband or that manager to see the world differently, right? And some of it I think is caring, and then the other one I'm really interested is how you had to see your husband differently. The people around managers that have their heads down. Yeah. What's the shift that we have to allow these managers to pick their head up and lead with more care?
I think the shift is raising their own self-awareness, actually, learning more about themselves and what truly matters. So this is when you're starting to get to know your own strengths, your values, your beliefs, and then thinking, hang on, the people who are working in my team are also human. They also have strengths, values, beliefs. They also have things that motivate them. Why do they come to work? It won't be because of the absolute love of the work. Maybe not. It may be because they've got families, they've got things that they want to achieve in their life, and work becomes an enabler of that. Sometimes it might be absolutely the work, and when your work actually becomes your purpose, then you've absolutely nailed it. But I think it's getting to know the humans, the people, what matters to them, what motivates them. And it's fascinating because I think we've still got a long way to go. I've been on a call this morning, and for the last 2 Fridays, and some of the people on there from an organization, they were really struggling to get the concept that professional versus personal. They were struggling to get the concept that actually we are one human being, that actually they were clearly coming to work with, this is my professional self and this is my personal self. And even to the point one actually said, we were talking about values, and they talked about, outside of work, I really value kindness. I don't value it as much in work. I was like, values are values. And hey, why would that value change when you're in work? So it's really we've got a long way to go. We've got a big journey ahead of us. But I just think there's a lot more people on this journey now with us. People like our shared friend, Helen. Helen's been on this journey with us, and, more and more are getting there, but we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, totally. Yes. You know what? I just had it even yesterday in some coaching where the leader didn't think about things like in terms of his direct reports, like perspective. Just thought, oh, I'm just going to give them direction, and not thought, well, what would be best for them? It's almost, I do believe there's a concept of love and there's a concept of selfless service, like in terms of how do I like serve? It's the servant leader model where it's the upside down. How am I going to serve? Anyway, this was the penny that dropped for this guy. All of a sudden he goes, oh, I never thought about how they want to be related to. I always thought how I want to be related to. And it just turned a total light bulb moment for him. He got chills. I got chills. And there we are, just sitting there. And I was like, hey, there you go. We'll just end it now.
That's a fairy dust moment. That's a sprinkling of fairy dust moment where somebody has that moment of, whoa, there is another way to look at this. There is, like you said before, Dave, about that shift in perspective. You have to have that shift, a fundamental, whoa, hang on, there is another way. And there's always another thought that can be had or another perspective. And it's actually about taking that time to reflect on not only yourself, but on other people. And it's really fascinating because we see so many managers promoted to their roles because of their technical capability rather than their desire to be suddenly a leader and a manager of people and teams. And if only they could see it as a fundamental career change, because that's what it is. It's suddenly very different. And you now got to think about other people, who are in your care and who are in your responsibility. It's your job suddenly to help them thrive, rather than just telling them what you want to tell them
why they
hope
don't.
that they listen and do what you want.
Yeah.
I wonder why they don't when they don't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Not enough pixie dust.
Exactly.
You got to double down. One of the things that strikes me is the self-awareness comment of like fragmented versus integrated views of ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. Like I am this, I am that. And I am always amazed at the number of times that what takes a breakthrough with as you're coaching high-powered individuals that are really career focused, taking them out of their current situation and saying something like, what are you teaching your kids about how you lead at work?
Yeah.
Right. And it's very interesting how it takes that to change the way you look at things, right? To change the things you're looking at, to actually have a breakthrough because they didn't see the connections.
No.
I'm fascinated with like how do you get like for yourself,
Yeah.
for you receiving coaching, what do you want in a coach? How does somebody help you with the things that you're saying are really important?
So I absolutely want somebody somebody who I feel is authentic, who I can trust, who I can be vulnerable with, and who I feel they've got my back. They're there to help me reach that next level. They're there to help support me and challenge me and empathize if I need to share things, but really to help me move from A to B, whatever that is. For me, somebody who matches my energy is who I would look for. At the minute, I've got a coach mentor, so a bit of both, wearing two different hats. And for me, the energy part was really important. And I was conflicted in terms of who was I going to choose, because I've got so many fabulous people in my network, but I needed somebody quite specific at this moment in time, and matching my energy in terms of not somebody who was going to rush off at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but equally not somebody who was going to sort of slow me down. It was somebody who, we were really kind of like-minded, but somebody who was going to really challenge me to get to that next level. And I think sometimes people expect me to have all the answers, having set up and co-founded a business called Coaching Culture, and I don't. And I want people to know that I don't. I've got some answers, and I've got a whole sack full of learnings. I've got a book out of it as well, sort of sharing all the learnings. But, there's so much for me to still learn, and I want to be able to express my own I'm going to say vulnerabilities. It's not just vulnerabilities. It's just about let me be me. Let me be authentically me, and without feeling
Jo,
judged, I guess.
well,
Does that make sense? Did I answer that
Jo,
right?
yeah, no, there's no right
You're
or
right
wrong.
or
It's
wrong.
really like we will.
I'm waiting for that.
There, right. That's your second company, right? There is no right answer.
There is no right or the second book. I don't think I can go on and do another company.
Here,
I think a
here.
book's way easier.
Jo, maybe you could share a little bit with the listeners, like how did you come up with, long before Helen introduced us, I found the Coaching Culture website. So tell me how did you come up with that?
Ooh.
What was the kind of, if you could just share like a little journey story on how did that come about?
Oh wow! Right, I'll keep this as brief as possible, but there's lots of interesting stories in here. So I had recently got my coaching qualification, and I was like, "Whoa, this has been life-changing! I've had so many epiphany moments. How do we get coaching out to the masses? Because it's so life-changing, and it's criminal that it's just reserved for a few people in an organization." That was the starting point. I gate crashed my way onto a course on a Saturday of somebody I didn't really know. Somebody connected. He was like, "You can't really come on the course. The course is already, this is the second one. You've missed the first one." I gate crashed my way on because he eventually conceded and went, "Oh, come on then." And that person became my business partner 18 months later, totally out of the blue. And the journey was, I went gate crashed on the course, got chatting. Everybody kept in contact on the course. And then one day he messaged me and said, "I've moved to this certain place." And I went, "Well, that's where I live." And then I realized he'd moved next door, but one to me, totally out of the blue. We became good friends, bouncing lots of business ideas. And he was a digital entrepreneur, and I was the coaching person. And I was on my soapbox about coaching, saying, he said, "What do organizations look for?" And I said, "Sustainable behavior change." But they're spending too much time focusing on knowledge and skills. They need to focus on mindset and behaviors. And the way to unlock that is through coaching. But I said, when I coach, I'm sprinkling fairy dust in one conversation at a time. How do we get this out to the masses? And he said, "Could we do it through technology?" And I was just about to say, "Absolutely not. This is a human experience." And I just went, actually, coaching is about asking great questions, allowing people to self-reflect and changing their behaviors for the long term based on their self-reflections. And from that, we created, it wasn't Coaching Culture at the time, actually, it was called Mindset Software Company. And that didn't quite have the same ring to it. So we created Mindset, and that was our first self-coaching tool. We built a Coaching Culture magazine, a community, and we started the coachingculture.com website wasn't available. So my business partner, rather than just accepting that, it wasn't available, but it wasn't being used either. Rather than accepting that, he decided to reach out to the lady in Canada whose website it was and bought it from her. She thought he was some sort of scammer at the time. Like, who are you? And why do you ever want coachingculture.com? And then coachingculture.co.uk wasn't available. And one day that lapsed in terms of their subscription. And on that day, we jumped on it and bought it. So we sort of we bought Coaching Culture, really. And all along, it's been going now 8 years. Yeah, it's 8 years in the summer. It's just grown and grown and grown. We've got organisations around the world, predominantly UK focused, but there's definitely people with organisations and a footprint through the world. And we've got loads of different content to help leaders and managers. We've got free content, we've got paid for content, and we've also got a platform, which is a conversations platform for leaders and managers to capture their conversations, but also to help them use a coaching style. So it's been a phenomenal journey, and it started with a blank piece of paper and a bit of a ranty conversation.
What other, so for those listeners, Jo also has a book. It's called, I'll tell you, it's called No More Managers. And you can get it. You can get it on Amazon, right, Jo?
You can indeed. It's on Amazon. It's on other places as well. And you can also get it on Audible as well. So people can hear my Lancashire tones from, what more do they want, really? my voice speaking out the book. It's also not just called that. The subtitle is 7 Steps to a Coaching Culture. Everybody forgets that bit catchy. Of the title for some strange reason.
The longer title isn't as catchy. Yeah.
If people only remember so that launched 14 months ago. And it's done well. People seem to be happy to have pictures taken with it, on the train reading the book, on the holidays reading the book. So because it's got a cheeky title, I think people either love it or hate it. And that's great for me. That is great. At least it's got an opinion.
Do you have any other resources that you recommend? I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, Michael Bungay Stanier had a photo with your book in his hand. I was like, wow, that would be a career best moment.
She's arrived.
So tell me anything else. We like the coaching habit, but what other resources would you recommend?
So, Michael Bungay Stanier, amazing, love. And he did that picture without being prompted. So I love the Coach's Casebook by Kim Morgan. So I did my coach training with Kim Morgan. It's a fabulous book. It's real life case studies of what coaching conversations that are linked to imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, fear of success, all these sort of the typical things that are holding people back. So I love the Coach's Casebook. And you know what? I love this book, and it's more about life and pushing yourself and believing in yourself. And it's called Life in Half a Second by Matthew, I can't ever pronounce his name, Matthew Michalewicz. And it's a book that if you knew how many days you had left to live and count them down like that, you would live your life in a very different way. We always seem to fall forward. Life seems to happen at us and to us. But actually, if we had an egg timer coming down, suddenly we might believe in ourselves a bit more. We might take that, the risk a bit more. We just might push ourselves. We might do something. So actually, for me, it was I listened to it while I was out running, and it was a number of years ago before I first went self-employed. And I was like, yes, this book is amazing. So I love that. And that's more of a personal self-belief kind of warm book.
Well, Dave, this is our time for self-reflection. I'll let you go first.
Thank you. First of all, this has been fabulous. In talking to Helen and hearing really good things about you. Absolutely exceeded any of those expectations, and it's just a pleasure to meet you. Really appreciate your energy. You're wearing the shirt is my birthstone, so I appreciate that. The
I
Aquarius
know.
is my sign.
Right.
February 12th is my birthday, Matt. I do expect another cup. I think my reflection is, as I was listening to you about what is there and what is missing in the sauce that creates coaching cultures, I wrote down like integrated value-based purpose, and that something around we need to create space in organizations and places. And I think part of what you're doing is you're creating that space where people can become more aware of their integrated purpose across their lives, and then be able to treat people in a better way, right? That creates a space in turn. So thank you so much for sharing.
I don't think
that.
I said those. Those words are way more articulate than I would ever say, Dave.
You said all those
You
words
still
with
wrapped
just
it up
some different
beautifully.
letters.
Thank you. I'll take that.
Thank you.
And I think my reflection, one of the things when you describe the story, your husband's transformation story, I couldn't help but think that how coaching changes relationships, like with people that we really spend the time with. If I'm asking better questions rather than telling, all of a sudden I'm like I'm a fellow traveler rather than
Yes.
like in front or behind. Like um, I'm not superior, I'm not inferior, I'm just a fellow traveler with my spouse. And um, it allows my wife to tell me the things that are really on her heart, and they may have nothing to do with whatever's in front of us. That's always like, it's just so like, oh, well, you don't see this connection that I'm making, but it's really, I'm stuck on the, and once I sort of unlock that stuckness, all of a sudden, and I think that's what coaching does. Our role is to
Yes.
ask the questions that unlock the stuckness, so I can get back, or I can be productive, or I could deliver results. Like coaching is incredibly valuable for a business to deliver and get stuff done, but it's not, work is just not just getting stuff done. It's yeah. So I really appreciate that.
I always talk about coaching builds trust and high performance, but a culture of trust builds high performance, not the other way around. So a culture of high performance doesn't build trust. It'll build, potential burnout. Whereas actually when you build that trust, which coaching does, the high performance will follow. And there's a fabulous quote. If I could leave you with a fabulous quote, that is a fellow friend and author called Casper Craven of the book Be More Human. And he always says, put people first and the results will follow. And for me, that kind of sums it up
Yeah.
fabulously.
Jo, what's the best way people can get a hold of you?
Oh, on LinkedIn, definitely. I air all sorts of things on there, and I'm Jo Wright Coach on LinkedIn because there's, I don't know how many Jo Wrights, lots of them. And I've also got the Coaching Culture website, coachingculture.com, and also Jo Wright website, jowright.com as well. So many ways to contact me. And obviously, if you're passing by.
Until next time, have a great day.
Bye-bye.
That's right.
It is awesome. I want to give a final shout out to our sponsor. Are you feeling stuck or overwhelmed? Character Matters Coaching and Consulting provides leadership coaching and consulting to empower you to overcome obstacles and reach your full potential. Visit charactermatterscoaching.com to learn more about their transformative coaching and how to get connected to Matt for your organization. And I just want to, and I love that quote that you shared, putting humans first. And I think that is the energy that you brought into the room when we started. And I really appreciate that energy and focus that you have, Jo. So
and thank you both for the opportunity to carry on living my purpose.
Until next time, have a great day. Thanks for listening. If you love this podcast, please share it with another coach or leader. Make sure you go to the show notes to get all the resources from today's episode.